Welcome to the IT Smart Guy podcast, a technology podcast aimed at the modern business owner. And here's your host, Tony Edwards. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the IT Smart Guy podcast, the tech-based podcast for the modern business owner. My name's Tony, and in this episode, we'll discuss recent announcements from both Apple and Microsoft, and a focus on a way you can improve the security of your accounts through the utilization of multi-factor authentication. Then, at the end, I'll be sharing my tip of the episode. So, let's jump in, shall we? Let's look at what's happening in the news. So, this episode is being released at the end of October. And over the past week, there have been some big things announced and released by both Apple and Microsoft. Firstly, on Monday, the 24th of October, Apple finally released their latest iteration of their Mac operating system, Ventura, as well as iOS 16 for iPad. Now, the iPad version of iOS 16 was delayed amid reports suggesting that Apple felt they needed a bit more time to polish up their new Stage Manager multitasking feature. And as such, iPad users jumped straight to iOS 16.1 as a way of keeping in line with iPhone users, as the iOS 16.1 update was pushed out to them on Monday as well. Now, the latest version of the iPad operating system includes many of the same updates as iOS 16 did for iPhone, including changes to Mail, Messages, Safari, and other key applications. Plus, the native Apple Weather and Clock apps have finally made their way onto that iPad. Now, updates still to come over the coming months include external display support for Stage Manager, and a collaborative productivity app called Freeform. Freeform is being billed as a souped-up whiteboard where users can sketch out ideas with their Apple Pencil, and the company also says you should be able to attach almost any file type to the canvas. Now, to me, this is a bit of a game changer. Now, iOS 16 is available on the iPhone 8 and upwards, including the second and third generations of the SE line, whereas iPadOS is available on all models of the iPad Pro, the third generation and later on the iPad Air, and the fifth generation and later on both the iPad and iPad Mini lines. Now let's move on to Ventura, or macOS 13. Now, to me, this update doesn't feel as big as others have in the past. There are some great new features, but it just feels more of an incremental update as opposed to having some of the wow factors that previous releases have had. Now, some of my favorite features that I have played with are message recall. Now, I quite often send text messages over my Mac when I'm working rather than using my phone. And despite being a good speller, autocorrect can change words, or I can have a sausage finger moment and there's a typo or a mistake. And I'll then have to send a second message with the right word in it to correct it. Now, we all have these moments, right? Well, with Ventura, I'm able to recall a sent text, edit it, and resend it. I'm also able to recover recently deleted messages if I need to as well. Now, for me, this is useful because I do delete messages from conversations from time to time. And then, knowing me, some time will go by and I need that information. And up until now, it's been too late. Shared photo albums have also been around for a while in the Apple ecosystem. But in Ventura, they've made a few adjustments. And users can allow up to 6 family members within the family sharing element to access photos within the group, and they have the privilege to edit photos anytime, anywhere. They've also made some great improvements to Spotlight in that users can find images in photos or in messages or in notes, the Finder, and also the web right from within Spotlight. Users can even utilize live text to search for an image or video based on the text that is inside it, and use visual lookup that can recognize animals, birds, statues, and even landmarks. Finally, Stage Manager. With this, users can multitask and get things done with ease. I love it because I'm able to resize windows to look the way I want, and the feature automatically organizes the apps and windows in a single view on any Mac, essentially enabling users to stay more focused when moving between apps and tasks. Now, one feature I'm yet to try out is the continuity camera feature. With this, Mac owners are able to use their iPhones as a webcam. All a user has to do is bring their iPhone close to the Mac while on a video call, and it will automatically switch to the iPhone as the camera input. And it works wirelessly, so you don't have to plug anything in. Essentially, for me, all I'll need to do is bung my iPhone into a tripod, park it next to my MacBook, and I've got myself a high-quality webcam when I'm out and about. Because when I'm at home, I've got a 1080p one here, which is all I need for right now. Now, Ventura is available on Apple iMac from 2017 and newer, iMac Pro, again 2017 and newer, MacBook Air from 2018, MacBook Pro from 2017, Mac Pro from 2019, MacBook 2017 and onwards, Mac Mini from 2018, and the Mac Studio, which was released earlier this year. Now, should you upgrade to these versions? Now, I would always recommend that users update their devices to the latest versions of software and operating systems as soon as they generally come out, not just for the new features, but for the bug fixes and the security patches. However, I do know a lot of people are reluctant to update to a new OS when one comes out. I generally update within the first week, and in all of my time of having a Mac, I've never had an issue. But if you are worried, keep an eye on the news, keep an eye on your updates, and wait to see an update to a version like iOS 13.0.2, for example, and then update. This will ensure any of the bigger bugs that have been found are resolved, and it will make your device secure again. Now, from Apple, we're going to go and now chat about Microsoft and their recent announcement regarding Windows. So, in early 2021, the prospect of a brand new version of Windows seemed highly unlikely when Microsoft had previously described Windows 10 as the last version of Windows, and they continued adding new features generally twice a year. However, Microsoft essentially scrapped those plans when Windows 11 arrived. Now, Windows 11 went from being a concept to an official announcement within a matter of weeks. And there have been no real assurances regarding the lifespan of Windows 11. So it's logical that we will see some sort of successor at some point. Now, Microsoft is believed to be working on Windows 12 internally, and it could just be a couple of years away. Now, Microsoft typically offers support for their operating systems for a number of years. Now, Windows XP and Windows 7 received updates for 12 and 11 years respectively. Windows 10 will be a decade old when its support ends in October 25. And if Microsoft continues this trend, Windows 11 will reach end of life sometime between 2031 and 2033. And if that's the case, a new version of Windows will need to be available at least a few years earlier. Now, there has been an exception to the rule in the past. Windows 8 only received 4 years of mainstream support. And that was mainly because of the overwhelmingly negative reception it had received. Now, there are signs Windows 12 could arrive much sooner. A recent Windows Central article suggests a major new version of Windows will be released every 3 years. The author of this article, Zach Bowden, even says that development has begun, with Windows 12 currently being in the early planning and engineering stages. And apparently it's even been given an unofficial code name, Next Valley. Assuming Microsoft sticks to the 3-year update cycle, Windows 12 would be released at some point in 2024. There's nothing more specific at this stage other than rumours, and making predictions so far out is practically impossible. But for context, Windows 11 was announced in June 2021 and was released officially a few months later in the October. But a full rollout to all compatible devices took many, many months, and it's likely to be a similar story for Windows 12 if and when we get it. And if this is true, chances are updates from either Windows 10 or 11 to Windows 12 will be free for a while, at least because Microsoft will be keen to get as many people onto their new operating system as they can. But right now, as I said, everything is very, very much speculative. So that's it for the news. Let's move on to the brain dump. It's time for the brain dump. In episode 3, we talked about things that you can do to improve your overall business security. In this episode, I want to focus on multi-factor authentication. So what is multi-factor authentication? So when you sign into your online accounts, you're proving to that service that you are who you say you are. Traditionally, that's been done with a username and a password. Usernames predominantly being email addresses. Nowadays, this isn't a very good way to do it. Like I said, usernames are normally email addresses and they're often easy to discover. And since passwords can be so hard to remember and people being still very much anti-password manager unless they really, really need one, people tend to pick simple passwords or use the same password on multiple accounts. And it's for that reason that almost all online services, online banking, social media, online shopping, email services like Microsoft 365 have added a way for your accounts to be more secure. So when you sign into the account for the first time on a new device or app, such as a web browser, you need to provide more than just your username and password. You need to provide that second thing, what we call a second factor, to prove who you are. Now, a factor in authentication is a way of confirming your identity when you try to sign in. For example, a password is one kind of factor. It's a thing that you know. Now, there are 3 common kinds of factors, and they are that something you know, so a password or a memorized PIN, something you have, like a smartphone or a secure USB key, something you are, like a fingerprint or facial recognition. The factors are typically 2 of those 3, so the password and one of the others. So let's look at how MFA works. Let's say you're going to sign into your email account on a new device or a new web browser. You enter your username and password, and if you don't have MFA enabled, that's all you need. And anybody who knows your username and your password can sign in as you anywhere in the world, and you will be none the wiser. But if you have multi-factor authentication enabled, things get a little bit more interesting. The first time you sign in on a device or app, you enter your username and password as normal, then you're prompted to enter your second factor to verify who you are. For me, I prefer to use an app on my smartphone as my secondary factor. I open the app on my phone. It provides me with a unique, dynamically created 6-digit number that I type into the site and then I'm let in. Why do I do that? Because my phone also has biometrics on it. So I have to use my face or a passcode to enter it. So I've got multi-factor authentication on here. I've then got to use a face or a PIN number to get into my app. So it's fairly protected. If somebody else tries to sign in as you, they'll enter your username and password, and when they get prompted for that second factor, they are stuck. Unless they have your smartphone, they have no way of getting that 6-digit number to enter. And the 6-digit number in the Authenticator app changes every 30 seconds. It's dynamic. So even if they knew the number you were using an hour ago, if they tried to use that number, it it would be wrong, so they're still locked out. Now, there are a couple of things to note here. Some people do still worry multi-factor authentication is going to be really inconvenient, and I get where you're coming from. But generally, it's only used the first time you sign into an app or a device, or the first time you sign in after changing your password. And after that, you just need your primary factor, so your password, like you do right now. The extra security comes from the fact that somebody trying to break into your account is probably not using your device, so they'll need to have that second factor to get in. And compromised passwords are one of the most common ways that hackers, scammers, attackers, and general bad guys can get at your data, your identity, or your money. So using multi-factor authentication is one of the easiest ways to make it a lot harder for them. For those of you that use Microsoft's Authenticator, there are some new features coming. Microsoft recently announced that they're bringing autofill support for payments and addresses, as well as rolling out an auto generator for stronger passwords. Seems like they're trying to get into the password manager ecosystem as well. But this is all part of Microsoft's wider push towards multi-factor authentication instead of passwords. Microsoft are aware that most users are attached to the use of passwords. Hey, we've been using passwords for over 2,000 years. And they want to ensure that their application, their Authenticator app, can offer more than basic password protection. And since launching it in 2016, their Authenticator service provides native MFA on devices when accessing a Microsoft account. And they've added features on top ever since, including phone sign-in, fingerprint support, password-free login, and even Apple Watch support. Another new feature coming out by the end of February 2023 is a new number matching feature. Now, this has been designed to provide tools to help stop users from making accidental approvals. Now, an accidental approval is where Uber went wrong a while back when they got breached. Their person approved something that they shouldn't have done. This means that they're able to add a layer of MFA into their system. Essentially, it adds a layer of protection from attack. Now, this feature will have to be enabled by security admins when it is released. And what will happen is it will essentially ask users to enter a number, which will be shown on the screen when approving an MFA request. Now, we have to do as much as we can to keep our accounts and our devices as secure as possible, and multi-factor authentication is just one way. Let's jump to the tip of the episode. Our tip of the episode. So, my tip this episode continues the theme from the brain dump. Multi-factor authentication isn't a nice to have, it's now a necessity. Login credentials are bought and sold on the dark web all the time, and all it takes is a few seconds to input these details to see if they work. And if you don't have MFA enabled, the purchase is straight into your account. And there's a fairly large percentage of people that use the same password for multiple accounts. There's no stopping them. They could get into any number of accounts with this one password just by trying it out. Switching MFA onto as many accounts as possible will give attackers another hoop to jump through. And as long as you don't approve any MFA requests that come through that you don't remember processing, you should remain fairly safe. Social media accounts are a prime target right now for attackers, and enabling MFA on these is really quick to do and can prevent you from losing access to these accounts that, let's face it, we as a population have become quite attached to. If you don't know how to do this and you want to know more, get in touch and we can give you some instruction. So that's it. We've reached the end of this episode. I've been Tony, the IT Smart Guy. Thank you so much for watching or for listening. I really hope that you found this episode insightful, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the next episode. Now, if you have enjoyed this episode particularly, please do let us know by leaving a review. And we would love for you to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for listening to the IT Smart Guy podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'd love for you to like and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice.